Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today I have a delightful conversation with Holly Lawrence. Holly has won everything there is to win in the world of Ironman 70.3, but it hasn't all been smooth sailing. She's dealt with almost career-ending injuries, but she's come out stronger and better. In this episode, Holly describes how she's taken control of her life and learned to manage expectations and her own emotions. She's incredibly passionate about the sport of triathlon and just feels so fortunate to be able to do it professionally. And she describes how that feeling of gratefulness for the opportunity to train and race as a professional is helping her performances overall. Now, a quick bit of housekeeping before we go on. If you're enjoying the show, I'd love a review on Apple Podcasts. That would really help me out. Please keep the feedback coming on social media. That is absolutely fantastic. And finally, please go to bennettendurance.com/media for the show notes, the timestamps, coupon codes, and all the links to this episode. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. And remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. I'm so grateful for the continued support of the show from these incredible sponsors. You really do need to have these products in your life. Personally, I use each of them daily. Athletic Greens nutritional beverage, Hyperice recovery tools, and the glutathione supplement Continual G. What I love about Athletic Greens is its simplicity. It's delivered straight to your door and it takes seconds to mix with water. It tastes great and goes down easy. And I know I'm getting the most comprehensive nutritional beverage on the planet in one quick drink. If you're looking for one product that has as much high quality nutrients in it as possible, then you want to consider Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens is more than just a multivitamin and multimineral. It takes it to the next level, adding a daily dose of superfoods, probiotics, greens blend, and more to support the gut health, energy, immunity, and stress. And right now, Athletic Greens is giving you, my audience, a special offer on top of their all-in-one formula. You'll receive 1 year supply of vitamin D and 5 travel packs for free with your first purchase for additional immune support. Many of the population are vitamin D deficient, including myself. I focus heavily in getting in the sun throughout the day, but when I can't, I religiously supplement with vitamin D. Adding vitamin D to your daily routine is just a great way to support vitamin D production. So if you're looking to get more out of your multivitamin and invest in your immunity, energy, and gut health, then you'll struggle to find anything more comprehensive than Athletic Greens. Take ownership of your health today and receive comprehensive nutritional insurance, a free year supply of vitamin D, and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. Now, you'll hear me mention Normatec and Hypervolt from Hyperice in several of the conversations with my guests in this show. Many of my guests and I are using these recovery tools religiously. You really must have them in your house. Sit in a pair of Normatec boots at the end of a long day. Use the Hypervolt percussion massage device to warm up muscles and loosen hot spots before working out, or anytime you have a niggling injury. They're just so easy and they're so quick, and they work. Their vibrating foam rollers, thermal technology, and Normatec compression systems just help you warm up faster, recover quicker, and simply move better. Seriously, these products are the perfect Christmas gift for any family member or good friend. Get $50 off all percussion devices now, no code needed, and get an additional 10% off with code GREG10 at hyperice.com. That's hyperice.com, HYPERICE.com, and use code GREG10 for 10% off. I have a web address for all of my listeners who already know that 1, the human body makes the most powerful antioxidants on earth. 2, the master antioxidant your body cells make is called glutathione, and the human body needs glutathione to live. 3, the reason I'm addressing a select group of listeners with this web address is that once you see what these scientists in my hometown, Sydney, have accomplished, it'll blow your mind. Go check out continualg.com, continualg.com. That's CONTINUALG.com. Check it out and let them know that I told you about it. All right, today's guest is one of the world's greatest triathletes. She's won almost 50% of the Ironman 70.3 she started in since 2012, or even better than that, 65% of the races that she started since 2016. And when she's not winning, she's on the podium every time she races. And that includes the World Championships, which she won in 2016. Then, after dealing with an almost career-ending injury in 2018, she came back in 2019 with a second place. In the world of endurance sport, she's still incredibly young, and I feel she's only scratched the surface of her potential, and I'm really excited for her next 5 to 10 years. I'm a huge fan of how she races, and I'm honored to have her on the show. So welcome, and thank you for joining me on The Greg Bennett Show. Holly Lawrence, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. Boy, you made me sound great.
Well, I just go through your resume. I didn't do anything. You did that
I
yourself.
didn't know those stats. Got percentages in there.
Yes, I should be your marketing PR. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to finally get you. It did take us a couple of weeks. We missed each other. You got stuck in LA traffic a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago. So I was really excited to have you on the show, especially before sort of the big race coming up, the one race that's coming up at the end of this year, the Challenge Daytona event. And I was excited to get you before we did that race. So thank you for making it happen.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we first met in 2016 Beijing. I don't know if you remember that, but it was basically the week after you just won your world championship title. And then I think you did go win that Beijing race as well. But since then, it's been up and down, but boy, you've been consistent.
Yeah, it's been pretty nuts. That was kind of the start of everything, winning Worlds in 2016. And I say that's the moment that my life changed, that suddenly people were, instead of betting against me or you didn't know who I was, it was suddenly like, oh, okay, now I felt like, oh, I've got something to prove, instead of just kind of flying in under the radar, which I was kind of in a nice position before in that case. So
yeah, it changes. Yeah. It changes the way you approach the sport, doesn't it? Suddenly you have these other expectations that you didn't realize were even around, other people's expectations, and you're trying to remove those and just focus on yourself. Was that 2016 win? Did you go into it believing it was really possible, or did it kind of blindside you?
Oh, no, I didn't. I mean, I was invited to be one of the 5 favorites to be interviewed by the NBC broadcast for the World Champ race. And I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm not one of the favorites. And I just kind of I told everyone oh, I want to get top 15 or top 10, which I publicly kind of put I don't tell other people what my real goals are. I always kind of mute them a little bit. And for me, it's a little bit better, but I really didn't expect to win it. It was something that I was aiming for in a couple of years' time, but definitely not something that I, even dreamt was possible then. So I, gave this really crap interview because they wanted me to go, I'm going for the win like everyone else does. And I was like, I just wouldn't say it. I was like, I just want to swim, bike, and run as fast as I can. And that's all I can do. And I'm going to be happy whatever the outcome is. And they could, they just wanted more from me. But yeah, it was great for me going into that race as kind of, for me, like an underdog. Because I just didn't have any pressure, and it was just it was a great way to go into a great race when everything else is aligned and not having the pressure.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Did you find, sometimes when you go into these races and you're feeling good about yourself, but you're not expecting yourself to win, and others really aren't probably expecting you to win. Was the exhilaration of that win even greater because of it was almost a little bit of a shock, or you had such a lead? Were you able to kind of get comfortable with the idea of winning when it did happen?
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm probably the only person ever that's taken out of an aid station, water, Coke, everything, 400 meters from the finish. I was I am not losing this thing. Like, I didn't enjoy the finish line. I was just like, until that tape was in my hands, like, I didn't believe it.
That's
So,
hilarious.
yeah.
So all the way down, you didn't give yourself a chance to really embrace it. You're just like, just
Not at
cross the
all. I
line.
wasn't clapping hands. I wasn't, no. It was like just beeline to the finish line. And because I just didn't believe it. Nothing, like, even all the time splits I was getting, I just said, oh, that can't be true. It's really this. I was just playing mind games with myself, and I just never let myself believe it.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? It took you all that time to just cross that line until you
Yeah.
really gave yourself the chance. And you look back and you go, hang on, what was it? I think Melissa Hochschild was second, about 3 minutes back. Am I right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I think it was like 2.5 minutes or
yeah,
something. But like,
yeah.
I remember on the bike, I was getting time splits by the motorbikes, and it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it was like 4 minutes at some point, and I'm like, well, they clearly don't know how to give somebody a time split. Like,
That is so great. I love that. I haven't actually heard you kind of frame it like that, because it's funny. Sometimes it's quite frightening to be in the lead of a major race.
oh
There's one
yeah,
thing to be chasing, but it's quite frightening. And I myself had to visualize a lot winning races, because it's very uncomfortable to be up the front and everybody chasing you down. I mean, when you think about that and you put yourself back in that situation, was that fear and self-doubt creeping in and you were having to manage that just the whole time?
I think I kind of go the opposite way. That I just always think they're chasing me. They're right behind me. Like, I never believe like I'm gaining distance. I never put myself in like a complacent place where I just think, like, even when I'm 2 minutes in the lead on the run, I just think, no, I'm being closed down. Like, it's going to be to the finish. Like,
Mm.
I never kind of let up.
But and then I mean, after that race, it wasn't like some people can win a world title and then you kind of don't really see them the next year. It's almost like expectation gets in the way, or they feel like they fluked it. But for you, it was completely the opposite. You basically went almost undefeated for 2017. Just
Yeah.
one race after another, boom, boom, boom. You
Until
just
World Champs.
well, you didn't have a great world champ, so I was going to leave that out, but you brought it up.
Yeah. I mean, you can't tell the story and not leave that out. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. What happened there then? Okay, so for everybody, I mean, you won 670.3s that
yeah.
year, plus other events. But then World Champs 2017, you come in, obvious favorite to some degree. That expectation, the weight on your shoulders, was there a little bit of that? Was it kind of like you
Oh, it was
felt?
horrible. I
Mm,
hated it. So kind of like backtrack. So winning 70.3 was in 16, and I'd gone from like, I totally naive about, the professional side of the sport. I just was racing for prize money pretty much. And then suddenly, I'm signing deals with sponsors, getting an agent, and, everything's changing. And then I've got, instead of just myself to race for, I'm all these other people who believe in me that I'm like, I am petrified of disappointing.
mm,
Um, and then coming out into 17, I just raced so hard. I just, my anxiety was like through the roof, because I just thought, oh, you know, I've got to prove to all these people that I'm worth it, that I'm worth what they're investing in me, that, they're right to believe in me, that I'm not a fluke, and I'm proving that to myself too. And
mm.
even in Oceanside, my first race back in 2017, I won by like 9.5 minutes. Like, that was just stupid. I could have just, clocked it. I'm, 7 minutes in the lead. I can cool it off and jog it home because I'm racing again in 2 weeks' time or whatever it was. And I just like raced aggressively and hard, like back to back to back to back. I was too scared to take a recovery week, mid-season, when it was totally planned, and just like the insecurity creeping in.
Mm.
And then I just picked up a little foot injury, like mid-season. And that's when I was kind of then just managing until World Champs. Like, I just like messed up totally that season kind of build. I just came out way too hard, just pushed myself way too much, didn't give myself any break, against what my coach was getting me to do at the time anyway. And then leading into world champs, I had a foot injury that I was totally hiding and ended up stupidly running on a Alter G, and my foot didn't hurt at like 10% less of my body weight. Decided it was a great idea to just lose 10% of my body weight. Came into world champs. Everyone's saying, "Oh my God, you look so fit. You're going to win this thing." I'm there with number one. I wanted to just hide because I'm like, I'm a fraud. Like, I'm not fit at all. I had the worst swim of my life. I lost, what makes me strong. And I had a bad swim, came onto the bike just having, no power. And I was like, I don't even know if they can run after this. I just pulled the pin, and that was a really low point.
But it's you've touched on so much in that. I mean, I've often chatted on this show about anxiety and insecurities, and even Jan Frodeno, who's kind of won everything. We were talking about self-doubt and fear and how we all use that as a fuel. Now, the only thing that you probably went wrong in using that fuel is you didn't listen to your coach or listen to yourself and just back off a little bit. Like it's you can see that you came out swinging, and you really were just doing incredibly well. But what I love about that year is the tremendous learning you got from it. As a 27-year-old, you came out, you got to win at 26, come out and have one of the best learning years of your life in 2017, and to have that so young, young in relative in terms of, the endurance sporting world that we're in, to get that experience so early on is just absolutely fantastic. To have that kind of result, that slap in the face is that knockdown we often need. You got it early, and now you just got to remember to go back to that. And remind yourself it's okay to take a rest. It's okay to, progress. Because then, like you said, 2018, was that the same foot injury that then lasted into 2018 and you kept racing on, or was it different?
No, so that was so before I just tore my plantar plate, but in 2018, I fractured my navicular. And I honestly think, what led to that was also just going against my body and just losing all that weight for that short time in 17. And, I just wasn't fueling myself. I was just putting myself in a really bad spot. And then, just kind of a freak accident. I crashed on my bike. That was in late 2017, just before Island House. It was like 10 days before Island House. I crashed on my bike just stupidly on a training ride. I was riding earlier than normal in the shadows. I didn't see the potholes, and I just lost my hands. And that evening, I swore my ankle was broken, but never got it x-rayed. I just managed to get to sleep that night because I didn't know whether to go to A&E or and then raced Island House 10 days later, came third, was great. Went to Bahrain the week after, won it, was fine. But I just still got this weird clicking sensation. It was just kind of off. And then it wasn't until Oceanside in 2018 that it just gave way and broke.
Do you think a lot of that was, we see it a little bit especially in sport, men and women, when we lose weight too quickly. Do you think it was a little bit of malnutrition? You were losing?
Oh, totally. I think what I did, in 2017, that I think that contributed to it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because we all want to get light and we all have this body image issue. I feel like it's not just women. I feel like the women speak out about more, but us men are just as bad with the whole, I can't see my six pack. I can't see ribs. I'm not ready to race. And it's like, I can't tell you how many times I did it myself. Right. So, but again, it's a great learning, that little window. And then that 2018, then you were out for quite a while that year. You still came back at the end of the year and won Bahrain again. So take us through that. Did you feel like, okay, I've had my career and I'm done, or was it always feeling like I could get back?
Yeah, I mean, so when it first broke, I went to see one surgeon and he was super optimistic, kind of just told me what I wanted to hear, which was, it's going to heal in 6 weeks. We're going to CT scan this thing every 2 weeks. You're going to be right as rain, like no worries. And I was getting CT scans every 2 weeks and it just wasn't healing. So then I was like, well, okay, I need to see another surgeon, get another opinion. And this was a highly esteemed surgeon, specializes in naviculars. And she was like, your career's over. You're not going to come back from this. And I went in on my own thinking it wasn't, going to be a traumatic, appointment. And I came out scream crying like my life was over. Like I was like not prepared for it, wasn't ready for that. And just hadn't even, come to terms that could even happen. So then obviously went to see other surgeons, and I went to the same surgeon that Jesse Thomas got his navicular done. And he was just kind of very matter of fact, but having a positive outcome. So I obviously went with him and just did everything by the book. But it almost like even though it was so horrific getting that horrible, terminal prognosis, it really helped me because because how we all are. If you say you're going to start running back in 12 weeks, you're going to push it at 10. You're going to push the lines wherever you can. Whereas like when I got my, 16 weeks, you can put pressure on it. I had it all in my diary. I wasn't going to push that thing at all. I was going to, if it was longer, I didn't care. It wasn't terminal. Like I was kind of faced with the worst, that anything back from that just, seemed amazing.
Were you a good, let me put it this way, Johnny Brownlee, when I had him on a couple of episodes back, when he had his injuries and was trying to get back, he said, look, I just want to be I want to be the world's greatest athlete, but now I want to be the world's best at being a patient and working out this injury. Were you a good patient? Were you on it every day? Or, I mean, how was it for you? Because I myself had a lot of injuries. So did my wife, Laura, who I think, we managed these things the whole time, and we want it so badly. We want so badly to be great. We want to look after our sponsors and the expectations, and we want to race and all of that. And then you get these injuries, and it's this, you can have this woe is me, this pity party that goes on. Mm-hmm. But was there a point, how was the emotional roller coaster for you in managing all of that?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely really dark times. I think it's hard when you can't even walk. Like it's such a basic thing that, your foot is cast up for 4 months, I think it was in total. Like you can't walk with 2 feet. Like you're either on crutches or you're on a scooter. You can't, take a mug from one room to the other room. It's like basic things that you look at a set of stairs and you're like, well, I can't go in there. And it's just such like, it was heartbreaking, like all the time. But I got myself to the pool nearly every day. I crutched in there, wiped out on the floor.
Oh, jeez.
It was just like, I swore every time I was going to buy them carpet. It was just, there was definitely bad times, but now I just think, gosh, I got through it. Like that's, you're proud of yourself for getting through that suck. And I think not glamorizing those times and just knowing that time will pass and you just need to pass it however you can. That's what I try and tell people now. Just look after your head. Time is going to pass. You just have to do it any way you can.
And I tell people, you will remember how to swim, bike, and run. It will come back to you. Because when you're in that dark place, you think, I don't know that I'll ever know how to run, coordinate it. I don't. And then you have that joy. Tell me about that joy.
Gosh.
Not just to run with any kind of pain or stiffness, but that first free-flowing run that you had. Tell me about that.
Well, it's so gradual that you don't know it's happened. But I think it's like when you realize, oh my gosh, the fear's gone, you know
Mm.
you're okay. And I just remember thinking like, wow, it's just so gradual that it's, when you've had an injury and you forget which foot it was, but with such a bad injury, you just have this fear that like, it doesn't matter if you've, be running for 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. It's just this nagging fear in your head that's, you're looking all the way at, unstable footing or whatever it is that, and yeah, I guess it's just, yeah, but it comes so quickly. That's the thing. Like I remember first getting my foot out of the cast and my foot was just like a brick, like at a right angle. And I'm thinking, when can point your one foot and the other one just stuck up there. And I'm like, it's never going to move like a normal foot. Like how can I, I took my booty off thinking I could just swim. And I'm like, I can't even kick. Like there's nothing in the way, but I just can't, like my leg doesn't move the way it's supposed to.
Wow.
And you freak out that it's never going to come back. But yeah, your body's amazing that it can go
But at
through
what
so
point
much.
then? I mean, you had all that happening until August, and then you're winning 70.3 Bahrain, which was a stacked field, a quality field.
Yeah.
Only September, October, November. What is that? 4 months later. I mean, that's
it's no time at all.
That's really quick progression.
I
Basically,
know.
you're looking at 12 to 16 weeks to peak performance. That's really extraordinary.
In my diary, it was like September 10th. I was allowed to take my first run step to winning my first race in December, like 10th.
That's
like,
amazing.
That's nuts. Yeah.
And then you went on, you continued that form then. You basically went on another winning spree, much like 2017, back into your, honestly, and the only person that got you a couple of times, and I'm really excited for this huge rivalry, and I'm going to talk it up on this show a little bit. You and Daniela Riff in the 70.3 world, and I think for you, we can talk about later in the show in the full distance. But I think, you went on, Dubai, North American champ St. George, you won. You got beaten in California at the Oceanside by Daniela, right? That was the first time. And then you won the Asia Pacific champs in Vietnam, European champs in, where was that? In the Netherlands.
Elsinore. Yeah.
And then in the Nice World Champs again, you and Daniela. Tell me about, going into that World Championships, that second time you got to race Daniela. She got you in Oceanside pretty comfortably, I think, right? Yeah. What was your thoughts going into, okay, Daniela's been my menace. How am I going to take her down in this race? What was the mindset going into Nice?
For Nice, it was so different with the like climb and the descent. There was like an hour's worth of descending almost, like, on and off. And like descending is not my forte at all. So
is that right?
For me, it was just doing the best I could do. And I really didn't focus on Danielle. And I don't tend to just focus on an athlete, because I just getting the best out of myself will just take care of, what I can do. So I don't kind of fixate on somebody. And, but obviously when I came off onto the run, I tried as hard as I could to eat time into her, because that was my only, play that I could make to do anything. But I was just like, it was like I just got a new lease of life. Like, I'd had the pressure I put on myself in 17. The worst happened in 2018. I didn't lose all my sponsors. They all stuck with me. And then I was like, I am just doing this like I had nobody, no pressure, just loving it, traveling the world, which I always wanted to do. It's my job now. And just like making the most of every experience and not kind of torturing myself with any extra, pressure that I was putting on myself. So it was just a really kind of like free year of racing, which I just kind of reveled in.
We've chatted about this. There's been a few people I've had on this show where we talk about when we get rid of expectations and we just go race, like you just said, with freedom, where we're free. And it's amazing how you can perform. Look, we can use expectation and anxiety and some insecurities to help fuel us, but it's kind of this. I am so grateful to be able to be on the start line. I am so fortunate to be able to be doing what I am doing.
Yeah.
Let's just go let it happen. And it's amazing when you take that attitude, how it just really affects you ability to perform at your very, very best. And I love that, because then again, you've gone on to win Bahrain again, and finish off the year in great style. 2020 was hotting up. Obviously, with the shutdowns and the world, going a bit crazy, it hasn't been fantastic. But it was good to see you back on the start line again a few weeks ago at 70.3 Ironman Cozumel, which you had, as no surprise, another win. Fairly comfortable. But that one, I think it was about a 10-minute win. Yeah. How's this year been for you, without having too much about it, but how's it been sort of managing the expectation of having a season, not having a season, trying to stay fit, not staying fit? What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this year it's just had so many kind of parts to it. There were just, at first you thought it was going to be really short-lived, and I'm making a plan B race schedule, a plan C, and, that gets thrown out. And then you're like, okay, well, you're just always reevaluating. But I think it's not been too bad from a motivation side or kind of beating yourself up about it, because it's not something that you've personally messed up, which I think so many athletes feel, which is quite funny, really, that you're like, oh, at least it's not my fault. Like most of the time you miss races is because, you messed up, you got injured. And this is just something that we're all in together, and it's just happening, and it's nothing, we can do about it. We all just have to play with the cards we're dealt. You just adapt. And I feel like with everything else that has happened in the past, I'm probably better equipped to adapt.
No, for sure. I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's almost like you control the controllables. I was walking with Laura and the kids a few weeks back, and we had planned to go back to Australia for a bit and all sorts of things. And it's kind of like, you know what? It's been taken away from us. We can't do anything about it. And it's almost, it's forced us to be more present right in that moment.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And you kind of go, it's actually kind of nice just to not overthink it. I can't do anything about it. So let's just, what can I do? And get on with it. So, I mean, you have this race coming up in, a week or so. Tell me how you excited about that. Has that been one where you've been, okay, it's definitely happening? Or have you been training cautiously thinking, okay, maybe it won't happen, maybe it will?
Yeah, I mean, with everything this year, you just don't know. You're like, even if people say it's 100% guaranteed, in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, but that doesn't, 2020 still happens. And yeah, but I can't wait. I can't wait for the PTO race, just because it's going to be so different. It's not what we normally do. It's against absolutely everyone across like ITU and long distance. So it's just going to be fun and different. And there isn't any pressure, because it's just such an unknown with, who can perform at that kind of race. So yeah, it'll just be fun.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to watching it. I think the PTO, for people who don't know, it's a professional triathlete organization, have put together a race in Daytona, Florida on December 6th that they've put up $1.15 million of prize purse. They're really trying their best to find a race and create something special for the professional athletes out there that haven't had a chance to race. There is a big amateur race going on as well. But they have invited a number of the short course athletes, the ITU type athletes, what do we call them? World Triathlon Series athletes. And it will be a nice mix up. For one, I'm looking forward to seeing you race, I think Flora Duffys of the world and that. Yeah. I think it's going to be a I think you're going to enjoy it. I really do, because I think you've all got so many weapons that you're all going to get more out of each other, and that's always great. When you have somebody that's always trying to get more out of you, I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
So I, for one, I'm going to try and get up there. I'm only a couple of hours south. I'd love to get up there and see you all in person, but I know it's not easy for spectators to get in, so I'm not holding my breath, but I might try and get up there. A quick mini break. I really want to encourage you to do something special for yourself and sign up to Athletic Greens and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. What I want to do with the show right now is I actually want to wind the clock back a little bit and get to know you a little bit better. When was it that you found the passion for endurance sports, and how old are you and what were you up to?
Yeah, so I started swimming at a pretty young age with my brother, and he was like mega talented, was making national finals really early on. I was just kind of one that tried really hard. It didn't really pay off. Kind of trained better than I raced. I just was like too stressed racing. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the racing part. I would do like my fastest 100 in the first 100 of a 200 instead of 100, which made no sense. And I kind of just hit the plateau at like 16. I was making like regional finals, but and just being a backseat with my brother every year at nationals, and he was making Olympic finals. I was doing a bit of cross country at school and did well. Like we went to nationals for that, like national schools and things. And I love cross country. And then my parents just kind of heard about triathlon and just thought it might be a good thing to do for me to like find some success, I guess. And then just got super stuck into that.
But was there a point where you were like in the sport of triathlon where you were like, okay, this is what I should be doing? Was there a real moment? Was it just gradually happen? You're like,
oh. Really, it was like super gradual. That in the UK, at least, there's this like domestic. I think it was called the super. I can't remember what it was called now. There's just like a domestic circuit that's really good for like young elites going up through the system to race for money, and they're kind of prolific. And then I started racing some European Cups, went to university for triathlon at Swansea. That was like a satellite center, so it wasn't like Loughborough where everyone goes for triathlon. And just kind of like just gradually kind of built through the ranks of that. But I was never really taken seriously. I never took myself too seriously. Like I loved it. I loved getting better, but I never thought like, oh, this could be a career, or, it's just something that I'm going to do as long as I can because I love it, and just see where I can get to. And then so I was still doing the short course then.
Did you, was it a conscious decision to leave short course? Why? I mean, the Olympics, you with your swim background and run background, was the Olympics ever on your agenda? So
I was always trying to kind of get onto funding, get onto kind of the British Triathlon program. But I was told really early on that my running would never be good enough, even though I'd never really had like a run coach or like, I was just kind of, my face didn't fit. I was too old to come into it at 16.
Oh my gosh.
I remember
who was telling you that you're running?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then like I was selected for European champs in, I think that was like 2013, which I was there for myself. And then during the race, I was getting told to stop by the people that I'm trying to please, because they wanted me to wait for another girl who was a faster runner than me. But I wasn't there to be a domestique, and they ended up wanting me to be a domestique, and I just, that's not what I was
No.
there for. It
Okay.
just wasn't. And I was just devastated, and I just wasn't ever taken seriously. That I think that was like the same year I did high V and some other like 5150s, and I just loved that.
Yeah.
That it was after, in 2014, I went to Commonwealth Games, and it was just a political nightmare that I was there on the Welsh team, but just doing the super sprint relay, and they didn't put anyone in the individual just because, it was a political nightmare. And I ended up, just saying, screw this, I'm going long course, I'm moving to America. I didn't want any part of it anymore.
Well, I think good on you for controlling yourself, basically taking full control of your life is one of the things I'm a big advocate of. I was consulting with a young guy from Scotland, and I think he was banging his head against the wall with the
Yeah.
British Federation and couldn't get starts and the way it was all set up. And I remember saying to him, mate, you just, from what I could see physically, he was always going to be better off going a bit longer anyway. And
Yeah.
I said, you're passionate about the sport. Stop banging your head, and there are other alternatives. And so for him, it was a big deal. And you've done the same thing. And I think all credit to you. And in fairness to the British, I will say that they have had probably one of the strongest teams in the world for 10 to 15 years now, both on the men's and the women's. And so they have tightened the reins, more and more and more. I think the issue becomes with that when you tighten and tighten so much, boy, do you lose a lot of great talent, on the extreme that you haven't dialed in yet. And for me, you're one of them. You are one of the great talents to come out of Britain. And you showed that once you decided to say, right, I'm going to get on with it and take full control, and I'm going to move to the US and go long course. And then so when that taking control and that kind of going all in, was that sort of around that start of 2015, end of 2014?
Yeah.
Is that when you decided?
Yeah, it was like January. I moved out to San Francisco to work with Matt Dixon. And because I'd done a couple of 70.3s, and I just loved it. And it was more to my strengths anyway, because I was a strong biker, a strong swimmer, and I'd be sometimes in, ITU races that the bike is just pedestrian, waiting for, you're counting the girls around you who can run faster than you. So
that's not fun.
Yeah, I just love the 70.3 distance.
Yeah. I mean, you say you're a strong swimmer, strong biker. You're also a phenomenal runner. You're still running low 120s for the half marathon off the bike. And I'm telling you, that's moving still. I think that's what makes you a special athlete, is you are the complete athlete. You have weapons across the board, and that's a scary person to race. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Then moving to the US, did you come on your own? What was your team and the people around you? I mean, how did that all work out? Because now you have a reasonable team, but tell me, when you first came over, what was that like?
Yeah. So I was actually with a boyfriend at the time, and it was a really easy kind of move, because he was looking to get a job in America, and it was actually Matt Dixon that connected him with his job. So then we just both moved out, and it was just kind of a really lucky situation. And I eventually didn't end up staying with Matt. I think I was with him for a year, and then moved down to Santa Monica and was more just piecing my training together. But I just loved being here, that you can train year round like it's a training camp, instead of having to go away on training camps over the winter like in the UK. And it was more just a sustainable lifestyle.
And so right now, who's in your team down there?
Yeah, so I live with my boyfriend, Sean.
I know Sean. Say hi to Sean for me. I from South Florida here. We used to do some swim training together when he was looking at.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy.
my coach now is Dean Golich. He's like primarily a bike coach, but he's a sports scientist. So he's just super, across the board, just very, very science based, and we just get to, on really well personally. And he wouldn't let me. He pulls me up on my, my stuff. So he wouldn't, he
My
wouldn't let me, yeah, he wouldn't let me do what I did in 2017.
Yeah. So how long have you been working with him then? Who were you working with in 2017
So
when that all
in
happened?
2017, it was Train Sharp, who was a bike coach. They were doing my biking. Sean was doing my running because he was also like pacing me on my runs. And I was like piecing together everything else. Um, and then when I got injured in 18, I was like, oh, okay, it's time for someone to just take total reins of my training. I don't want to be piecing it together. I don't want, Sean to be doing my running anymore, to be, like I want him just to be my boyfriend and not my coach too. And
It's
that's been
it's
great.
hard to manage that though, isn't it? Sorry to
Oh,
interrupt, but
yeah.
that relationship, Laura and I, we basically coached each other, and what I mean by that is I might take control a bit of the physical overall program. She'd help me with all my emotional, highs and lows, because she was far more the even keel, person in the relationship. But it was always a work in progress, and we often had to remind each other, our marriage, our relationship comes first. And then we had to step back and take a deep breather. So with you and Sean, was there that kind of relationship, those kind of discussions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always just tough because, like, I obviously wanted to please him. I wanted his, acceptance and whatever as me as an athlete, as well as me as his girlfriend, and it's just, it's just so much easier if
Yeah,
being separate.
I agree. And how was that conversation? Did you bring that one up?
I think it was probably a mutual thing. I can't remember, but he was probably super relieved.
I bet. And what about your family then? Because if they're all back are they in Wales or in Britain there? I mean, are you getting to
Yeah,
see your parents and your brothers and
England.
sisters?
Yeah, I tend to go back now only once or twice a year. Obviously, COVID's had put that block around that, but usually just on my way back from the Middle East races, I'll fly by for a little bit. But yeah, like it's hard being away, but also I couldn't imagine living in the UK anymore, just with like the weather and I feel just like my whole life is out in the States now, and it's just a very accepting place to be, to have this kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, people find it normal. I remember actually when I first growing up in Australia, to be a professional triathlete was very normal. We grew up with
Oh
professional
wow.
races that were live on television, and it was a very accept. When you said to somebody, "I'm a professional triathlete," everyone say, "Oh, that's great." Then I came to the US in 2000 or even earlier, I think late 90s, and I say, oh, I'm a professional triathlete. They'd be like, "You can make money at that?" I'm like, how do, how do I answer that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so. And how much money do you make? And where does your money come from? I love how people are very comfortable asking you how
Oh
you make your
yeah.
money. And I'm like, oh, and what do you do? Oh, I'm an accountant. And I'm like, oh, people pay you to do that? It was always so the US where you are in the US is maybe fairly accepting of it. I think that Southern California, they're very used to professional triathletes, and
Yeah.
there've been so many there for so long. That it is nice to be in a place that you can be comfortable to be a professional triathlete. I want to move on. We've talked a fair bit about the mental and the emotional side of sport, especially with what you've gone through. These days, are you working with anybody, or how is your sort of mindset preparation going into big races these days? Or, is it just from the lessons you've learned? Are you visualizing and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so actually last year I started working with a sports psychologist who was just super. It was a great time because it was also just like me working on myself personally, like outside of sport. Um,
Mm.
but you know, the crossover between life and sport and everything else, like it was just a really good time, and I really got a lot out of it. That I think like it just really changed me, gave me a whole new perspective, and even like leading up to Nice, we obviously worked together a lot, and that's good. I just think like it's such a big, you know, you spend all this time working on your physical body to not work on your, you know, mental side. You're just,
Mm.
you know, missing such a big part. Um, so yeah, no, that was super helpful. And like even just leading into Nice for me, being focused on like it was a lot about just me focusing on being proud of my effort and being gritty and not the outcome, which was really good. And also like headspace meditation is something that I find is like been a really good thing to just add into my daily life.
Mm. You mentioned life plus sport, and I had a guy by the name of Hamish Carter. Hamish Carter won the 2004 Olympic Games for the men, and New Zealander, just an incredible athlete through the late 90s and early noughties. And he was really one of the favorites to win the 2000 Games and came way back, did not have a good day. And he had to step away. And it wasn't change himself as an athlete, but change himself as a person. And that was the one big takeaway from that conversation we had. He said, look, I had to change who I was as a person and my outlook at life. And he came back to 2004 as a different person, the same kind of athlete, but a different person. And that affected the way he raced. And then he went on to win the Olympic gold. And it was a very fascinating insight into the way that we can perform on the race course is directly correlated to how we are in our home life, our relationships,
Totally.
how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's fantastic that you've reached out to a psychologist. What else has she done in terms of, you talk about the athletic side. What has she done in terms of your home life?
Like working on like, cause you know, me and Sean actually worked together on relationship stuff too, and just I suppose just stuff that you never just take out and evaluate, and you realize all the stuff that doesn't serve you that you've just kind of adopted or, you know, just carried on, just repeating. And yeah, there's just been a lot of stuff that, and it does just cross over in sport too, whether it's like you're looking for validation and things. Like I grew up with like swim coaches and stuff that you're trying to please, and then with other coaches that can be really dangerous because you're putting yourself in a hole all the time. And whereas like my new coach, Dean, I say new coach, I've been with him for a couple of years now. You know, at first I was like, are you even looking at my training? Am I good? Am I bad? Like, what do you think of me? And he was like, you did it. Like, it's just a tick in the box thing. You know, you did it. If there's no problem, there's nothing to talk about. And that's why I was like, oh, you know, I don't have to be so emotional about my training. Like I'm using this as a measuring stick of like what my self-worth is. And like, just, you know, that was kind of a natural process that I didn't even realize needed to happen. But then, you know, when we go over that stuff in like psychology too, and it just like, it's just stuff like that you just don't realize, stuff you're carrying with you or things that you're just, yeah, it's just realizing your patterns and whatever it is that.
Well, it makes you ask, why am I doing it?
Yeah.
You know, who am I doing it for? And I think all of us can get in that, you know, whatever we're doing, it's like you can get in that little trap, can't you? Of, you know, hang on, what am I doing it for? I've talked to a number of younger athletes, and a bit like you, beating their heads trying to go to the Olympics, living on their parents' credit cards, traveling the world, trying to go. And you go, do you really, really want to go to the Olympics? Or is it what your parents and your family and the rest of society says is what you should be doing? Or is there something else that you should be, you know, that you really, really want to do? And I think asking yourself those honest questions, which I think we all need to constantly do. I don't think it's ask once and then forget. We've got to keep asking ourselves, you know, is this really what I want to be doing? And So Dean's kind of training now. Is he's taken over the swim, bike, and run, and
Yeah.
or have you still got a squad that you use, or how's that work?
Yeah, so I have a squad that I swim with. It's changed slightly during COVID, but yeah, he just kind of ties everything together. And like
Mm.
swimming's kind of easier to manage, but running and cycling, he has total control over.
Well, that's good. How many hours a week are you sort of training these days? What's your training look like?
Um, I don't really add up the numbers, but like I'm probably on the lower side. I don't do like tons of volume. It's more just kind of quality stuff, but I would guess around 22 to 25 hours.
That's
Which
right on the money. That's kind of, I don't think that's low. I think that's kind of right in the middle. I think the only time that changes is when people start to add in Ironmans and they might spend a few more hours on a bike each week. But honestly, I think that's right in there. And how's your your training? You've had a few coaches now. Now that you're 30, and I think it's the
I
golden 30.
know.
No, it's the best time. It's for an endurance athlete. We call it the golden 30s. I think the 30s. Chris McCormack actually referenced that to me. I think when we both sort of turned 30 at similar times, we said, right, now it all comes together. Now the endurance matches the speed. Our mental side improves. But how has it changed for you now, getting to this point? You're training over this last sort of 10 years that you've been in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more secure in where I am now. I think that's a big thing. I've kind of made a little career for myself, which I'm proud of. And I have sponsors behind me, which obviously makes it a lot easier than when you're, 26 and you're going race to race trying to earn prize money or, don't know when the next paycheck's coming in. And I suppose I still race with the same enthusiasm and I just love training. And it's just never lost on me that, I'm so lucky that my hobby is my career and I get to do this like every day and I don't have to get a day job yet. So,
Yes. Avoid that as long as you can, right? Just
yeah.
keep going. I know. I kind of, for myself, I milked that. I guess I raced professionally till I was 44, and I wouldn't have changed a thing, right? I mean, obviously, I would have liked to have had more world titles and maybe a few more wins along the way, but you definitely got to be grateful for what you're getting. What about in terms of sleep and recovery? How are you working that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've always been like pretty on top of, like hours of sleep and when I'm not training, I'm like pretty much horizontal. I'm in my Normatex. I'm pretty like religious about everything else, or just all the little things. I did a sports science degree, so I feel like I know about nutrition. I know about, everything else that goes on that um yeah, I think that little stuff I always kind of treat as important.
You mentioned the Normatec boots. That was always the one thing that to be able to sit down in the basement, put the Normatec boots on, and even the worst case scenario is you put your feet up for half an hour to an hour and you can't move, with those boots on. And
Yeah.
I used to drive Laura mad because I'd always be yelling out for water or food or something and I couldn't get up from the boots. And then it got to the point she wouldn't do it, bring me anything anymore. I had to come prepared. But the Normatec, they actually sponsored this show. So anybody listening that wants to, you can get a discount by going to the show notes and they'll have a link there for you. But definitely worth having in your arsenal just to be able to sit. Are you using like the Hypervolt, for the massage tool? Or?
Yeah. I use that like more just like quick brush over before training, after training, but then I just like the Normatex, like it's just passive. If you're going to be sat down watching TV, you may as well be in them. So I probably spend like an hour to 2 hours a day.
Wow.
Average, yeah. They're just permanently out. I have a travel pair and I have a living room pair that just stay permanently out on charge, ready to go.
That's awesome. Are you getting massages and things, chiropractic work, often otherwise?
Yeah, I get massage like fairly often, not all the time, like maybe once every couple of weeks.
Hmm.
I have like strength training like twice a week, and my PT, I have a bit of manual work like every time before each session. So, um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Are
And
you,
my friend is okay too with giving a little massage here and there.
who is?
My boyfriend. Sure.
Oh, is that okay? Well, let's keep the show clean, but that's
You're
great. Good
making
on
me
him.
feel, I'm like, just 15 minutes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You mentioned nutrition. Are you supplementing with anything? Do you have to watch what you eat, or is there supplementation that you're taking?
So I get blood tests every like at least once every year, kind of to see if you're deficient in anything, and like things that I'm always deficient in, like vitamin D,
Mm,
iron's normally low. So like things like that, I just feel like optimizing um like your blood profile if you can. Like, you don't want to be deficient in something. Uh
mm,
Collagen is something I started using coming back from my injury, just to, like promote collagen synthesis like anytime before strength training. So that's something I've just carried on before
mm.
strength training, and like hard runs, and like protein, obviously. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And sometimes I've like, because I had a bike coach before who was keen on beta alanine. That's something I've tried in the past, but it makes me feel really nauseous. So I feel like
That's
it
brutal.
helps me train better, like recover from training for like repeated intervals. But yeah, it's a hard thing to like religiously do every day because it's like 6 grams a day. You get the tingles, you feel a bit nauseous. Yeah, I did that there's a couple of years that
Yeah, played around with it.
yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? The vitamin D one is the one that I'm fascinated with. And I always knew that I needed to supplement every time I had sort of blood tests. It
Mhm.
sort of showed I was a little low, and then I had Dr. Mansour Mohammed, one of the world's leading geneticists, come on the show. And we did my whole genetic profile, and he came on and he read it out, and I was listening to it. I'm like, oh, it was kind of, very intuitive. But I was feeling very vulnerable. Let's put it this
Yeah,
way, as a
you want to
podcast.
win. You want to
And
win your blood test.
yeah, I want to win my genetics. It's my DNA. I mean, it's like, and he actually did say, look, when the way I receive vitamin D is poor, the way I transport it to the cells is poor, and the way I receive it in the cellular level is poor. He said, Greg, you never can live north of 40 degrees, and you must be out in the sun, and you need to. And it was interesting to know that that's at a genetics level. That's a DNA level that we talk about. Some people are just affected more so than others in the way they respond to DNA. So that was interesting that you mentioned that. And I don't know if you've done any of that kind of DNA testing, but it was very, very fascinating for me to hear that. And we went through a whole bunch of other things, but I won't bore you with. But it could be an interesting one for you to try, because I think the one thing with the blood work is, and I think everybody should do blood work, a couple of times a year if they can,
Yeah.
is it's still a snapshot in that
Yeah,
moment.
of course.
And it can be you're just coming off,
Lots of it. Yeah.
yeah, but it is worth people doing. I think in terms of general health, it's a conversation we've got to have more these days. I think, pandemic of COVID is one thing, but I think the pandemic of metabolic health is even greater.
Totally.
And us, well, I'm not a professional athlete anymore, but professional athletes are not the metabolically healthiest people. Believe it or not, they do tear themselves down incredibly. So it's something to be just aware of, as we're all beating ourselves up training every single day. I think it's really, really important. So yeah, that's been absolutely fantastic though to hear that little bit from you. Now you only get massage once every 2 to 3 weeks. That's
Yeah.
that's that's not much at all. I think I retired I was getting massage 5 afternoons a week and chiropractor
No,
once a
you
week.
weren't. No, you
Oh yeah.
weren't.
Actually, by the time I was 44, and this is no word of a lie, I would get up in the morning at about 5:30. I'd hop in an Epsom salt bath
No, you
for for about 15 minutes, very hot. hop out, do some trigger point, therapy, rollers and ball work and everything. Then I'd go do a little 3 to 4K easy jog just to get the body moving, a walk jog. Then I'd come back and kind of start my training, whatever that was. But then all my training, I would warm up, get it all done by 1:00. And then the afternoon was always recovery. And if I didn't have a massage like you, I'd be in the Normatec boots or whatever. But it really became that's the reason I actually I stopped. It wasn't I loved the hard training. I was passionate about the racing, but the doing the little things to try and keep the body going became so much. I was like, I don't know. I didn't realize though, once I retired, it would still take as much work just to keep the body going, for everyday stuff now.
I mean, maybe ask me in 10 years' time and my massage.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to. Let's talk about that. Looking forward.
Yeah.
What's next? I mean, obviously, we've talked about the PTO championships this year. Being that the world.
So this year, before everything, I was planning to do my first Ironman.
You were
at Ironman St. George. I wasn't going to shout about it before. I was just going to show up on the start line and and that was like perfect because it was drivable. It was a course that I know well from 70.3 distance. So I was super gutted that got pushed out. But that's still the plan going forward. It's not going to be an Ironman at St. George next year, so I'd have to reevaluate. But I'd just really like to be at Kona to race, because I think like your first time in Kona is just kind of a learning experience, and I just can't watch Kona another year from the sidelines. I just can't. Like it's just too hard. Like and even like I don't know how much of me actually wants to do an Ironman, but there's a big enough part of me that's just so curious to see how I can measure up. That kind of. And the fact that Kona's after 70.3 Worlds, then you're like, well, if I could qualify, then, I'm not losing anything, and it would just be a bonus.
I don't think anybody really wants to do an Ironman, by the way. I think we think it's kind of like you do it for some people, it's to just, tick a spot on, and I've done it, kind of tick a box. But I think as a professional athlete, obviously, if you can do well there, I think it's great. But I think it's an event that if you love the sport, you've got to go do it and give it a go. And I think with your background, with the team around you, with your experience in the half Ironman distance, I think you're going to find, and like you said, I think you're managing expectations well, by just saying, look, just give me a chance to just ease into it and see how it goes. I think you'll do very well at it.
I feel like I do well over the long distances. I just don't know about that long distance, but I don't know, like I'm just curious, and it's just a new challenge that kind of excites and scares you, and I think
that's important.
That's always good.
That's really important. It's nice to have that little bit of fear and that anxiety, isn't it? See, that's what we're fueled by. All of us, we don't want to medicate it. We want to go do an Ironman. We're going to use it for fuel. I love that.
I know. I remember the first time I did a 70.3, I was in tears afterwards. Like, I can't do that again. It was too long.
It's too long, too hard.
A 2-hour bike ride. I'm, not bonking, but you're just like, where the hell is this finish? Like,
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. It's so true, isn't it?
Alone time that I'm like, there's a lot of alone time to do an Ironman. And I've always said I need some, it's got to be like midlife where I've got some deep, dark stuff to work out, like alone time. But I don't know, I'm just gonna have to make faces at the cameraman or something, and
I think I saw a lot of mates go to Ironman once they started having kids. It was
Yeah,
amazing how suddenly they needed to do 5 and 6 hour bike rides. I was like, huh.
no way. Yeah.
That's great. Now, what about some of your places? You mentioned that you traveled and you've done all these races. What would you recommend to listeners for races around the world?
Ah, I just think racing is like the best way to travel because one, it takes like all the pressure of just you loving the place because like you big up your vacation somewhere that you want to see. Like it can be a little bit too much pressure that you put on that place to just overwhelm you. So if you're there for a purpose, you're there to race. Like I'm just like making the most of hotel life before, like get into a nice hotel, eat good food, like obviously, within whatever you're allowed. I always like carb a load for 3 days with candy. So I'm always like on a sugar high. And like every
Do not listen to her. Do not listen to her anyway.
oh yeah, maybe. Actually,
I love that.
it's honestly
Go on.
the best. It's the best thing. I have it all weighed out. Like
Yeah.
it's a proper procedure. Um, and then like you get a couple of days afterwards when you're just like tired as hell and like just earns your couple of days vacation that you can just totally let loose, just make the most of it. Like I just think it's the best way to travel.
Mm.
Like I went to Vietnam last year on it was like 6 days or 7 days after 70.3 St. George and like just had a whale of a time, like making the most of like getting massages and at the hotel, like just living the high life over there. And then we like had a big party after the race, and yeah, it was
Mm.
awesome.
I agree. I agree that these racecations, as they call them,
Yeah,
I think, and some of those Asian races are just phenomenal. I think you mentioned Vietnam, and I think the Philippines. There's just so many incredible. I love going to Europe, although I
yeah.
felt like every time I went to Europe towards the end of my career, it was always raining and cold. So I started to get, I only want to race where palm trees are from now on. Uh,
Oh,
that was it. I got comfortable. I got very comfortable in my old age. But yeah, did any of those races really stand out where you're like, okay, people, you must go to this one? Any of those?
I just think all of them are just such a different experience. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I won't hold you to it.
I've never been to Asia. European Champs was awesome.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just like, I'd love to look at next year's calendar whenever it's out and be, thinking, where can I go?
That's awesome. I love that. And what about for training? You've mentioned, Southern California. Is there anywhere else you'd like to train or have trained?
It's hard. Like even now, like Santa Monica is like such an expensive place to live. There's no pro triathletes that live here. And like, but you try and look at anywhere else, and the weather is just so good all year round. It's like it's just so hard that I've been burnt out from like real winters in the UK that I'm like I can't do another real winter when you're picking your clothes up from the radiators before you ride just so you're like warm for that first 10 minutes getting out, crossing patches of ice on the road, wearing an aero shell because it's just pissing it down, raining. Like, yeah, they were just kind of gruesome, grueling, trudging into the pool every day with, just raining outside. Whereas here I get to swim out in the sunshine and the mountains here are just beautiful. Like it's hard to beat.
Yeah, you painted a really gloomy picture just then. I was visualizing the poor, and there's many athletes in the UK that are listening to these shows, and I really feel sorry for you guys now. And I think even Canadians and North Americans now that are getting
Just being
that really
spoiled
cool
now.
weather.
That's all it is. I'm just spoiled.
Yeah, well, I think it's not just spoil. You've made it happen.
I know.
You're making it happen. I'm all about life by design. You choose what you want, and you go make it happen. So you're behind the steering wheel. So good on you. I think it's fantastic. So this has been fantastic. Where can people follow you and that?
Yeah, so Instagram is pretty much the only social media platform I use, and my name is Holly Lawrence Try.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, this has been a real thrill. Thank you for making it happen. This is really fantastic just to get a little insight into your world and how you've progressed and where you are. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been absolutely fantastic. Now, if you want any of that information, you can go to bennettendurance.com/media for the show notes, timestamps, coupon codes, and all the links. I'll have all of that there. Holly, thank you so much again. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. That was fun.
Thanks a lot for listening to Be With Champions. If you enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Be With Champions Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.